I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up, then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome, everyone, back to the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm your co-host, Gabe Lullo, and we have Lexi Graham as well. We're super excited to be introducing 2 amazing people, and let's get into it. Welcome back. Haley Moore, Mike Barbeau, you guys are awesome. We know you well. We collaborate in many passions, but we're super excited to be introducing you to our audience. You guys are a dynamic duo behind Acquire. Just for the audience members, Acquire is a company. It's really redefining the luxury hospitality and food and wine experiences. Haley is also a national acclaimed sommelier. I used to live in Northern California, so that's where I learned what sommeliers are. It's pretty amazing of what you do, Haley, and you've been featured in Forbes, Food and Wine, and you really bring Michelin star-worthy events to clients globally. Mike also brings 25 years of sales and client service expertise, focuses on scaling businesses, creating meaningful experiences for his clients. And together, you guys, like I said before, are a dynamic duo. You're really elevating how people connect over food and wine and those unforgettable moments. So welcome to the show. How you guys doing?
Thank you. Good. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So Haley, I'll start with you. I'd love to hear your origin story, and then we'll get into yours as well, Mike. But, most people, as I always say in this show, don't go to school to own a business, right? They typically figure this out along the way. And some do, some are entrepreneurs at age 18. But my question is like, how did you get into this? What's your origin story here? How did you find this passion?
Yeah. So, my path to entrepreneurship was definitely circuitous. I think as a sommelier, I always knew I wanted to work in restaurants. I got the bug when I was 15 years old and I started in restaurants. And I wasn't one of those people that fell into restaurants, by accident. Like it was very intentional. I always thought I'd open a restaurant, but sort of the further I climbed in the food chain, the more I realized that like that was not the business model that I was looking for. And I did it for a very long time. I was there for about 23 years. The pandemic had other plans for me. So I already had a type 85 retail license, which I still help a lot of private clients curate their at-home wine cellars. And I stepped out on my own as a restaurant consultant in 2020. So the idea was to be on airplanes, opening restaurants all over the country, writing beverage programs, teaching people about wine. Obviously, spoiler alert, that's not what happened. That March 16th phone call, I think I lost all of my clients within an hour. And so we jumped online and it was definitely like kind of a wild ride. I knew that corporate diners especially needed a space that felt like a restaurant. And I knew that we could create that on Zoom. And so I had a PDF with 3 offerings and I started pushing it out to, all of the people that used to dine in my restaurants. I incentivized out of work restaurant people, private dining people specifically, because they had access to these folks who booked private events. And I, gave them money to help me find new clients. And each event turned into 3 more, and each of those customers, rebooked on average 3 times. So we spent 2 years just fielding inbound, and it was like a really beautiful thing. I was able to employ a lot of out of work restaurateurs, sommeliers, chefs, and we created this really beautiful culture where like our why was profound. It was like connecting people over food and wine at a time where total isolation was required. As people started to go back into real life, right, we had to sort of figure out how to actually create an outbound sales strategy, which that was a thing that I had never done before. I had no idea. I learned what a CRM was in the last 5 years. So I was a baby when it came to these things. So it's been a really fun learning experience and just a joy to find someone like Mike too who could kind of help us with some of those systems.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting. Like, founders are either they're really good at the sales side and then they go find a product, or they're really good at the product side and they got to go find sales. And, it's amazing to see how you were able to take a business that wasn't really designed the way it is today and now be able to deliver it and bring it to market, which really brings us to you, Mike. 25 years in scaling businesses and partnerships. How did you start and what attracted you to acquire?
First things first, my wine room is being renovated. That's why I'm in the desk area, not in my cool wine room. But I was actually an agency guy for 10 years almost in San Francisco, and then moved to Los Angeles and worked at a startup, employee number 10, basically the first kind of client services sales guy. And I just kept saying they were doing the sales wrong. And they're like, okay, you're now the head of sales. And I was like, oh shit. Like I didn't know what I was doing. And it was the best indoctrination into how you need connection and context to create deals, because we were a small company that nobody knew. We had no process to speak of. We didn't really need a process. We just needed people to talk to. And getting out there with the founder, who, as you mentioned, he could talk to anybody, but he was so smart, he almost scared people into not asking questions. So I could be the practical, here's how this is going to work for your business person. And it really taught me how to have that conversation around, it isn't just all the, platitudes and promises of sales. So what does it mean for my day today? Being able to tell that to people. So over the past 15 years at agencies, ad technologies, and now Acquire, I've been able to take that oh no moment and be like, I have to build this from nothing and apply it to sales teams of anywhere from 3 to 40 people. And sometimes that's teaching people how to, sell. Sometimes it's building the process, but that has all helped me jump into what Haley had created basically on her own bubblegum and duct tape style into a good sales process and tweak instead of reinvent. And that's what we've been building up in the past better part of a year of making a better mousetrap.
That's amazing. I mean, Haley, you both and Mike, you guys are like what I call like scrappers, right? You just got grit. And going from 0 to 1 million, right, takes a lot of grit, especially in during the pandemic time. You did you obviously a lot of inbound, word of mouth, organic building, and now driving into outbound. What really do you think regarding the grit? Like, do you want in attracting new people into your business when it comes to that straight motivation? What do you look for?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this might be a better therapy topic than a podcast topic, but like in times of profound loss, like my MO is like get to work, and so I think like, and the pandemic was such a wild time because I think like restaurant people were really stripped of their identities literally overnight. Like when you work in restaurants, you work 100 hours a week. Like grit is not, it's a requirement. Like you can't do it any other way. And so from the going to that to going to like, now who am I? I had a 1 and 3-year-old sitting there staring at me, not able to carry on conversation. And I was like, we need to do something bigger. So I think for me, what I'm always looking for is people with entrepreneurial spirit. I'm happy to guide and sort of, but I think the people in real leadership roles like need to be able to like look at the picture, see what needs to be done, and then, put their head down and do the work. We can provide the structure, we can provide the framework, we can provide the tools, but like, to have people who can step up and really see what needs to be done and then do it is paramount, and that's not easy to find either. I recognize
Yeah.
that.
And it's interesting. It's different than products, right? Because we're in the service business too, right? We provide professional services. You guys are in the service business. So it's a lot different. We're not selling a pen, we're not selling a unit.
Yeah.
I know obviously there's wine as a product, but we're really in services and hospitality from different angles, which leads to partnerships. So Lexi's our partnerships manager. I know she's got a bunch of questions for you because we're always curious to know what other successful businesses are doing. But Lexi, what do you got in regards to the partnership side?
Yeah, for sure. So I know it's all about connecting businesses and clients through curated food and wine experiences. What do you think are some of the best strategies using those clients to engage and have those memorable moments for them to keep wanting to come back to you guys and use these services?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, food and wine is technically what we sell, but it's like what we really sell is connection. Like I come from the school of Danny Meyer where it's like, you know, people don't care about the food and the wine necessarily. They care about the way a place makes them feel. And so it's like people want to they want to feel something. They want to be seen. They want to feel recognized. And so we're basically taking all of these restaurant tools, all these Michelin level tactics and applying it to the corporate world because I mean, I've never worked in an office. I spent 23 years in restaurants. It's not corporate world is not my background. And when I first started doing these events, I was like, man, this feels so sterile. And these people they spend so much of their lives doing this. Like, if we can show up and give these people like a really rich, connected, beautiful experience, that's step one. For me, it's like, how do we sort of deliver hospitality on scale? But beyond that, when it comes to like customer and prospect relationships, like people are going to be loyal if you make them feel something. So it's not enough just to take people out to dinner. It's not enough just to send them the proverbial, Dom Perignon. It's like if you hear someone say something that they like, and my whole thing is like it doesn't have to be expensive to be impactful. And usually the things that are the most impactful are either free or really inexpensive. So you send someone a bottle of Dom Perignon, but you're sending that to 50 people. Okay, great. That's one thing. But what if you heard Amanda say that she likes almond milk lattes and you DoorDash her that the next morning as a thank you for coming, or I hope you got enough sleep last night. There's thoughtful gestures that you can weave into your sales cycle. And I think that's what we're really trying to do at Acquire on scale. And it's not, it's old school. It's not, we don't have automated tools for that. We're not using any tech platform to do that for us. We're trying to just sort of make people feel something. And feeling valued, feeling loved, feeling supported is really kind of, I think, the biggest strategy.
Well, and that's the
Great
point.
point.
The
Value
value
Let's keep going. Yeah.
every restaurant from McDonald's to Mastro's has a value exchange, right? Like I go in expecting to pay a certain amount of money to get a certain kind of experience, and as long as that experience is met, I feel good about it, even if I'm having a Big Mac or a T-bone. And it's the same in sales. Like when I go into my first conversation with a prospect that I just got from you guys, or somebody I meet at a conference, all the way through to the client I've worked with for 5 years, there's a value exchange in that conversation. So I have to bring something to the table, and they're doing the same thing. And if it's even great, we both leave better off for it. And that's an interesting dynamic that I don't think used to be the case, or at least it wasn't the case as much in the past. And in terms of partnerships, a lot of partnerships is all about selling now. So how do I work not just with other people, but other companies to give them something of value so that when they hear somebody talking about an event, they bring up Acquire. And it isn't you give it to me first, and I'll give it back. A lot of times you find yourself giving a lot more before you start receiving. But I think that's today's sales economy is how can you be valuable in every one of your conversations, even when there isn't an SOW on the table to be signed, because it comes around. And I'm a believer in karma. I think Haley is too. We can talk about that in a different podcast. But like the more we put out there into the world, the more it's going to come back around. I think in what we've been doing over the past 12 months, we're starting to see it here with clients and prospects alike.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we live in a day and age right now where AI, and automation and this spray and pray, but just tweaking it a little bit. It's the same thing as it has been, right, Mike, for like 20 years. It's like this
Yeah.
approach versus, quantity versus quality. And you get gifts, I get gifts all the time, but they're always like cheap. I don't need another Yeti mug with your logo on it, right? It's like you guys take it to the next level, that Michelin luxury quality. And to your point, Ailey, it doesn't need to be expensive for it to be high class and high end, right? So how do you guys factor in that quality versus quantity concept, and why do you think it's so important to fostering relationships and being authentic to separate from all that noise like AI and everything that's happening these days?
Well, I think that's a big part of it is that people are so accustomed to the noise and they're so accustomed to being bombarded with all of these things that don't have any feeling and they don't have any emotion or any, they're not conveying any of that connection. So then, it's so easy then, honestly, I think, to surprise them. Like they come to one of our virtual events, we meet them in person, whatever it is. And they're like, "Oh my God, that was so different," And that to me is the biggest compliment because you're like, how are we helping to elevate people's brands? Well, we're doing it by creating moments of really authentic connection. Like the table for me, I use the table reference a lot because to me, like the table is a very sacred space. It's like where people connect in the highest level. It's food and wine is sort of the connective tissue to make people relax into a space. And the table is also on Zoom. We're sitting around a table right now, like we're connecting in a way that feels powerful now. And so most of the time people get on Zoom and they don't feel anything. And so I think, the quality over quantity part is like, well, how do we just make people feel something? Step one. And by doing so, you're remembered. And when you're remembered, your brand is remembered and those relationships become like, the back pocket thing. So the gift can then just be a timely thing that comes afterwards where it's like, hey, I heard what you said and I remembered this thing about you personally. Now they feel seen. Now they feel remembered. And so the gift is really just the follow-up strategy for that.
Yeah.
Well,
100%. Yeah, and that kinda leads me into my next question. How do you measure the success of experiences you create? Do you see immediate benefits, or is it more that long-term gain and retention and business expansion that you see from that?
It's both, and because she won't, I'm gonna talk about Haley for a second, because the immediate response is what happens in the room, and the table is such a great reference for this, or symbol for it, because if if a dinner table acted like a Zoom meeting, only a couple people would be talking, somebody would be telling everybody else what to do, they'd be holding up presentations, and everybody like, "This is the worst dinner ever," right? So, when you get in with a choir, there's just certain people we all seen them on Zoom calls of big groups of people. They're connectors and engagers. It doesn't mean they're at the microphone all the time, but they know how to bring people who would otherwise stay quiet into the conversation and add value or keep the conversation going or take a left turn at Albuquerque to get back on track, whatever it is. They're just good at it. And Haley is phenomenal at it in branded meetings that effectively are webinars with wine or whiskey. How do you make that engaging and keep people talking? And somebody from one of our clients mentioned that part of any of these meetings is who you're going to meet at these kind of pitch type meetings. And that's a really interesting thing to think because the value exchange used to be tell me what you do, company X, Y, or Z. But now it can be, oh man, this person was on a webinar with me. They're in the same role that I have. And now we just met them. I have a reason to talk to them and learn something new. And Haley is just great at sort of moving all the pieces around the table to get people talking. And then a lot of times can just take a step back and like let them do the engaging piece, the memorable piece. And that's a really kind of the secret sauce that we have. It doesn't come in a wine bottle or a whiskey bottle. It comes in that engagement that we can create. The downstream implication is that from a sales perspective, like I don't have to say it. Obviously, the more connections you have, the easier it is to sell down the road. And for us, the engagement is 5x, 6x ROI on what they spend to hold the event. For them, it's what they see in their pipelines in terms of prospects, speed through the funnel, bigger deals, all the things. And in both, we have measurable examples of it happening, which is super cool. So
Yeah. I mean, I think I look at the Zoom room like a restaurant and it's like, you read the room like you read a table. It's like, are people leaning in? Are they having a good time? So like the first measure of success is like, is everyone engaged? Is that person that would normally be standing in the corner at the cocktail party, are they like sitting at the table, leaning in, listening and talking and sharing? Because I care about that person. Like the big extroverts are going to have a good time no matter what. It's you want to create all of your events for in person or virtual for the introvert that doesn't want to be there, because if you can make that person have fun, like you've won everything. And then the long term is, yeah, like in restaurants, I tied myself to revenue. Like I knew that by understanding how to make a business money and leveraging my purchasing power from a beverage perspective, like I would be one of the most valuable people in the organization. And so I think that that's what I learned, in 2023 when people started going back to real life. I was like, oh, the only way that virtual events can be important still is if we can tie ourselves to our clients' revenue. So, like, we want to know the pipeline up for conversion in the room. We want to know who your big fish are. I spent my life making people feel special on a dining room floor. Like, I can make them feel special on Zoom. Like, but we need to know who those people are. We do a ton of research. Like, we know it's a little bit stalkery and creepy, but we know all sorts of things about you before you show up, and that's intentional because we want you to feel like you're seen. We want you to feel recognized, and so we're doing that all the time. And so it's really like, but and we also try to help our clients like get the sales team involved, make sure they know the intention of this event, what did we do here? What is their responsibility after it's over? If you have a bad product and a bad sales team, obviously, like, we can host great events all day long, but how are we going to maximize the impact of that if they don't know what their role is afterwards, right? So we're really trying to help them with the follow up too. So it's not just host an event and then it's over, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Actually, I got a follow up on that because you were talking about being stalker and in sales, that's what you got to do. You have to personalize the experience, right? People buy from people that they like, and people buy from people that they remember. And personalization is huge, especially in our world too. And I know it is in yours. What do you do? If you take us through it, if you don't mind, like how are you able to personalize the experience as much as you are? And why do you think it's so important to personalize it versus just walking in the room and doing your act and then at the end of the day, see if it closes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, 11 Madison Park, if you ever dined there, it's a really beautiful experience, and they don't have an open table screen, they don't have a host desk. You walk in and they call you by name, and they do that because they've done their homework and they know who you are and they know things about you, and they've just gone above and beyond in personalizing those experiences. We do the same for especially our in-person events. We will have, a deck in the back of everyone's faces. I know that Martha, who's going to sit on seat 3, used to be a pescatarian in 2012. And so I'll tell her, like, when she walks in the door, are you still only eating fish? If so, chef has something prepared for you special, right? So knowing things about people and I mean, we put our entire lives online, so it's not difficult, right? But it's not necessarily the most highly scalable thing, right? And then during our events, we take guest notes. So for both virtual and in person, in restaurants, at the end of the night, I would stand there with my glass of champagne at the open table computer, and I would put in notes on everything I could remember about every table that I spoke to, which was usually every table in the restaurant. And we do that so that, we want to know where your daughter went to college. We want to know how you like your martini. And like we do that so that when you come in again, we can have the martini waiting for you. We can ask you how your daughter's doing at Stanford. Like fill in the blank, right? And so we do the same thing online and we turn that over to our host companies so that, you know, the next day, within their salespeople's follow up, it can be the most personalized follow up possible. Falling back on that, like it doesn't have to be expensive to be impactful, right? Like, and that's in their hands. But I think it's really important to have that information.
It creates an interesting challenge from a sales perspective, though, right? When you have a very personalized, engaging experience that is what you're selling, you can't really use AI or just generic outbound, right? Because it doesn't line up with the thing that you're selling. So, how do you get personalized? And in a world where Zoom info can give like everybody everything from somebody's waist side to their IQ, like everybody has the same stuff. So it really just becomes like kind of what we were talking about at the beginning about an issue of grit. Like, are you willing to put in time to learn something about the company, the client, the person that, whatever, that you can make it sound like you've put in the effort to understand them so that they'd be willing to pick up the phone and talk to you. And I think that's where, as we've done outbound campaigns or even starting to work with you guys, it's how do we keep the sort of tenet of who we are as a personalized, engaging experience and bring that all the way up into the first conversation for two reasons. One, we'll get people to pick up the phone. But two, there's other people out there doing sort of what we do, not as well, we'd argue, but we have to differentiate. And if we're going to differentiate on that, it starts with the first few characters we type into the first email.
100%. That kind of leads me to my next thought. Do you guys think that the industry is heading more back to in-person events, or do you think it'll stay virtual? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and what you guys are seeing.
I mean, there was a big swing in 2022 and 2023 where everyone was so excited to be back in person. And the value of in person is still, I mean, clear. Like it's incredibly important. And I'm not arguing for virtual to replace in person, but I think something needs to happen in the space in between. And so, we get together at the conference and we do the thing, and all the stuff that happens around the water cooler or at the bar after the conference, like all of that is what's so valuable. Um, but then, we don't see each other again for 6 months or a year. So how are we keeping those prospects especially engaged? How are we connecting with them in a way that is like important? And so I think that, yeah, virtual has definitely come back in a big, big way. And I think companies are realizing that it's just a really impactful tool, And when done the right way, you're just nudging those prospects down funnel. You're keeping your best customers close. And if you do it at the right time in your sales cycles too, especially when like people are up for renewal, bring people on, have a really engaging experience. I mean, we're seeing some of these conversion rates that are happening because people are just doing these extra little things. So low lift, high impact. I mean, I love virtual. It's the way we deliver hospitality on scale. It's important for sure.
It's incredible. So let's switch gears here and talk about content because we're obviously doing a podcast right now, and you guys are spending your valuable time with us. But at the end of the day, Haley, in particular, you've been, in high profile publications like Forbes and Wine Enthusiast. How does content and building content really elevate acquires visibility? And then where do you see content going as a strategy? Because we are like you said before, 2023 and 24 and 20, like all what we're doing right now is seen as content, 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 right? So our strategy is calls and content, outbound and driving inbound through content. So what's your point of view on this?
Yeah, I mean, personally, like I love to write. Writing has always been an outlet for me. And so I'm working on a couple sort of like thought leadership pieces that I really am excited about. And who knows if they'll actually go anywhere, but that's where I feel more comfortable. I think a lot of us learned during the pandemic. I think this is a common thing, and this is one of my top secret things. Don't tell anybody, but I'm a closet introvert, and so yeah, I feel totally awkward putting myself out there, putting my face on camera. Like this is great, being in virtual events, great. Like doing here's the behind the scenes look at what your Michelin level event feels like. Like that is I know that I should do it. But the reality is like when I'm in an event, like I'm really trying to connect to people and be where my feet are. And I think that that can be a little bit distracting. All of that said, I do try to make sure that there is someone who is capturing some of those moments so that we can then tell that story because it is important to give people a lens into what you're doing and how it's impactful. So yeah, I think content is wildly important. But I think how you're doing it is, I think sometimes we're a little bit more subtle with it. We're trying to explain to people how what we're doing is important without necessarily like bombarding them with, for example, my face all the time.
Yeah. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because you're a go-to-market leader, right? You know, ourselves, we're not all about looking at case studies anymore, or looking at white papers. Like, what we're seeing is everyone wants to go to a podcast or go to LinkedIn or go to a blog or get onto a newsletter, and it's that TikToky type, I say, content in business to business that is very much happening these days. What's your position on it?
Well, I'm a pessimist at times, and I think podcasts can be too pitchy. I think LinkedIn can be too much preening. But what you can't do, even with the proliferation of AI and the ability to create content with a click of a button, right? You can't really get at the humanity of the who of it all. Like who is the person behind this thing? Who and for better or worse, what they're great at and what they're not great at. I think the reality of what Haley puts on the paper and pushes into the digital realm is a lot of like her own experiences of what's happened. And that isn't something you can fake. And I think that's where I'd like to see content go is less about the case studies that everybody has and the logos that everybody's worked with and all the like just you know what get on stage and tell me the worst 5 mistakes you've made in your career and then what you did about them because you wouldn't be on the stage in the first place if you hadn't fixed those mistakes. You'd be in the gutters somewhere. So like those are the interesting stories. And I think it doesn't all have to be negative like that, but I think the reality and humanity that you can put into content is what people gravitate towards and why the good podcasts and the good, TikToks are based in that form of reality.
Right.
When I think people are just looking for authenticity, I told Mike that it's like the problem I have with my face on social media is that I have to do this, to do it. And I have to put on I have to put on a nice thing. When I did this thing recently, a series of like me on my trail runs. And I was like, the reason I did that was honestly so I didn't have to put on mascara. So it was like a 6-part series. And I was like just out in nature where I normally am talking about hospitality and B2B marketing. And was it effective? I mean, maybe, but I think the point is that like
They were awesome. Stop saying maybe. They were great.
I'm the worst. Like, but I think it can stand out because there's more authenticity behind it. Because you're like, this is who I actually am, versus this is who my brand is, or this is what the brand is trying to be. It's like, no, just be if you are the brand, be yourself, first and foremost. And then I think people will gravitate towards that because it feels refreshing, you know?
I think it's great to go back to personalization, right? I get on a call just to say hello to a new partner, and I'm watching, Lexi and this person meet for the first time on a Zoom call. And they're talking about pickleball, they're talking about Disney, they're talking about, baseball. And I'm like, Lexi, do you know this person? It's like, no, no. Yeah. They've been following me on LinkedIn, and she posts all of this stuff. Now, does she post stuff that's relevant to business and more of like a commercial on what we do? Yeah, of course, absolutely. People know what we do, and she does, but they also know that she loves to play pickleball like 10 hours a day. So it's like that's what we talk about when it comes to personalization. We're totally aligned with what you guys are saying and what you guys do. And I haven't seen the videos, but I want to watch what, the day in the life running. It's real. I mean, that's what makes it. And to go back to it is like you're buying from people that you like, and you're buying from people that you trust, and you're buying from people that you can relate to. Yeah, I think it's so important for sure.
And being able to have that tangential conversation where you're bouncing around to different things and learning about the person as you go. I grew up in New Jersey for part of my life and went to high school there, so I have a hat that has a New Jersey logo on it. And that hat has started more random conversations that have helped me close deals than anything. So, oh, did you grow up there? I lived in the city, blah, blah, blah. And the ability to sort of run that conversation, much like Haley runs the room when she holds events, it's tantamount to being the best salesperson in the world, because you can just talk about all this stuff, learn, and okay, now let's get to the business part. And what's amazing, for every 30-minute business meeting, you probably have 5 minutes worth of business and then 25 minutes worth of wasted time. So if you could just find the right balance between the personalized components and the sales components and the business components, I think it helps everyone out. More fun too.
Absolutely. Well, now that everyone got to know you guys a little bit more, let's talk about how do people get a hold of you. But before I get into that, who are the people? It's not the how, it's the who, right? Who do you want to talk to? Who is someone that in our audience that you would love to be, connected with and talk to about hopefully working together and doing some collaboration?
Might join.
Yeah. So, I mean, by title, it's field marketers, event marketers, sales enablement people, but those people are all to some extent in service of sales and go to market functions, right? So anyone who's involved in being asked to attend, being asked to invite people to events is who we want to talk to, because they've all probably suffered through or paid for the Charlie Brown's teacher webinar that they just never want to go through again. And we can do that differently. We can do it better. And like Haley said, it's going to fit in between the tentpole events they probably already have in person or otherwise. Anyone involved with those type of events, but specifically the people that we help the most are those field marketers and event marketers, because not only do we throw a better event, but there's really two experiences that are at play at the same time. The event itself and the act of building and logistically setting up and running the event, we do a lot of that for those people as well. So we make it easier up until the event, and then the event is better, which creates the downstream results. So those are the people. Anybody who that sounds good to is who we want to talk to.
That's awesome. Hey, I got to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell me a success story from that individual that Mike just shared, a past client that had an experience with you guys, and it just turned into an amazing success story from there. Is there any stories that you can share with us?
Yeah, there's a company that we work with that we do quarterly events for probably, I don't know, maybe 6 to 10 of their field marketers. So we have a steady rotation. But we did one virtual event where we had about 75 people on, and it was a whiskey tasting. So we get these like really rare bottles of bourbon and we split them. So people get to taste Blanton's and Pappy and all these buzzword whiskeys, right? So that alone is like the experience that's the carrot to drive people there. Um, but we had this really great call and everyone was super engaged, having a great time. The event was over. People always these events often people will stay for like 30 minutes past, and they'll just be chit-chatting about the Coast Company product. They'll be talking about the spirits. We just make it fun. But there was this like moment where these there were two customers in the room and they were on the same team, but they were both there in separate locations. And they were like, well, we're ready. We're ready to sign. Like, what do we do? And I actually left the Zoom up, left this room. Their salesperson, like just Spider-Man in, and they closed this massive deal, like literally I mean, I think our event was over at 4 and they closed it at like 4:42. So it's that thing where I was like, and I'm texting the marketer on the side going like, this is it. Like, this is exactly why we do this. Um,
Well,
I think there's a personal success story too that's fun that just happened to us. We had an event where somebody who was an attendee, not our client, somebody who attended, said, I want to do this. So they became a client of ours. And then talking to them a couple weeks ago, her boss was on the phone and talking about how he started a wine club at his golf club, and like they all bring the wine. So now we're sending him his next bottle of wine so that he can go win that competition at his golf club. It's like that's personalization right there, right? And it's just fun to have those real human moments with somebody where you're like, oh, we're going to help you kick everybody else's ass at the golf club by giving you a bottle nobody else can find. Yeah.
He's in Napa and he's like, "Do you want to just come and talk about this wine?" And I was like, "I do. Yeah, totally. I'll show up." And it's like, "No problem." So I'm like, even better. I'm like, "I'll bring you this bottle of wine from my cellar and then I'll talk to your friends about the varietal and then I'll leave."
It's just incredible to see like where you came from, not knowing what you wanted to do with it, and then turning into this, and then with the pandemic and the rest, it's just, and now you guys are, facilitating massive deals being closed because of the memorable events you guys are creating. It's just amazing. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. How do people get a hold of you?
Thank you. Well, yeah, the website is probably the best way, acquire-wine.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Haley, great to see you. Congratulations on your success. We're looking forward to seeing you guys even be more successful in the years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.